On Storytime Audio, we bring you gripping tales that delve deep into the human experience. Today's story, Rebuilding After Betrayal. The journey through a cheating wife's infidelity follows James Peterson as he navigates the turbulent waters of betrayal and heartache. Join us as we explore his emotional journey of discovery, healing, and the difficult path to forgiveness. This is a story about love, loss, and the resilience of the human spirit. Stay tuned for a tale that will captivate your heart and mind. James Peterson never looked forward to the gatherings at the exclusive Los Angeles Country Club. These events, held once a month, were little more than an excuse for the city's affluent to flaunt their wealth and indulge in idle gossip. Unlike James, his wife, Jessica, relished these evenings. She eagerly anticipated each gathering, spending days preparing her outfit, hair, and makeup to perfection. But over the past year, Jessica's drinking had become a problem, often leading to uncomfortable situations for both of them. James and Jessica had been married for 22 years. They met in 1994 while James was pursuing his MBA at Stanford University. Jessica was a bright and lively undergraduate studying art history. Their connection was immediate, and they were married 2 years later in a grand ceremony attended by family and friends. They had 3 children, all of whom were now in college, scattered across the country. Their eldest, Matthew, was studying engineering at MIT. Their middle child, Emily, was majoring in political science at Georgetown. And their youngest, Sophie, had just started her freshman year at UCLA, exploring various subjects before deciding on a major. For the first decade of their marriage, James and Jessica shared a deep bond, but about 10 years ago, things began to change. James, who had become a successful investment banker, often found himself working long hours. Jessica, meanwhile, devoted herself to raising their children and engaging in various social and community activities. Over time, their connection weakened, a natural development, James thought, as they settled into the routine of their lives. James had accepted this as an inevitable part of long-term relationships, though he secretly longed for the passion and intimacy they once shared. However, he never expressed these desires, fearing they would seem unreasonable or unfair. He resigned himself to the idea that the rest of his life might be devoid of romance. Despite this, he found solace in his work, which provided a substantial income that ensured their financial stability, even with the considerable expenses associated with their children's education. Jessica, in contrast, enjoyed the luxury of not having to work. She filled her days with volunteer work, charity events, and social gatherings. Despite being in her mid-40s, she maintained her youthful appearance, a testament to her regular visits to spas and beauty salons. James, on the other hand, considered himself average in looks, with a slight paunch and graying hair at the temples. He dressed well out of necessity, given his profession and Jessica's penchant for shopping, but his attire brought him little joy. It was a Saturday evening in early June 2018 when the latest country club gathering took place. As usual, James found himself wandering aimlessly around the club, engaging in trivial conversations with people he barely knew. The evening dragged on, and he quietly sipped his drink, waiting for an opportune moment to suggest leaving. Jessica, meanwhile, was in her element, laughing and chatting animatedly with a group of friends. James watched her from a distance, noting how effortlessly she commanded attention. As the evening wore on, Jessica's laughter grew louder and more frequent, a clear sign that she had had too much to drink. James approached her, intending to suggest they head home. However, just as he was about to speak, he overheard Jessica's voice, louder than usual, addressing her friends. "Honestly, if it weren't for Daniel Mitchell, I wouldn't have experienced a single pleasant moment in bed in my entire life," she exclaimed, her voice carrying across the room. A hush fell over the group as several women noticed James standing nearby. Jessica turned to see what had caused the sudden silence, her eyes widening when she saw her husband. The alcohol had clearly clouded her judgment, and she let out a series of drunken giggles, trying to diffuse the tension. "James, I didn't know you were here," she said, her tone a mix of surprise and annoyance. "You shouldn't eavesdrop, my dear." James stood frozen, his face an unreadable mask. Inside, a storm of emotions raged. Without a word, he set his glass on a nearby table and walked out of the room, leaving the club behind. He drove aimlessly through the streets of Los Angeles, his mind racing. The revelation about Jessica's affair hit him like a physical blow. He had suspected that their relationship was deteriorating, but he had never imagined she would betray him like this. As he drove, his thoughts turned to Daniel Mitchell, a man he barely knew but now loathed with every fiber of his being. Eventually, James found himself at LAX. Acting on impulse, he parked his car, bought a ticket for the next flight to Denver, and boarded the plane. He needed to get away, to clear his mind and figure out what to do next. Jessica was already home when James arrived. It was past midnight, and the house was eerily quiet. He found her in the living room, still in her evening gown, nursing a glass of wine. She looked up as he entered, her expression a mix of guilt and defiance. "Where did you go?" she asked, her voice slurred. James ignored her question. "We need to talk," he said, his tone cold and detached. Jessica sighed, setting her glass down. "I suppose we do." They sat in silence for a few moments, the weight of the unspoken words hanging heavily in the air. "Why, Jessica?" James finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why did you do it?" Jessica looked away, her eyes filling with tears. "I don't know," she said. "It just happened." James shook his head, his frustration mounting. "That's not an answer. You've betrayed our marriage, our family. Don't you care?" "Of course I care," Jessica snapped, her tears turning to anger. "But you're never here, James. You're always working, always too busy." I felt neglected, unloved. James felt a pang of guilt but quickly suppressed it. "So you decided to find comfort in another man's bed? That's your solution?" Jessica didn't respond, her silence speaking volumes. James stood up, his decision made. "I'm leaving," he said. "I need some time to think. Don't try to contact me." Jessica looked up at him, panic flashing in her eyes. "James, please don't go. We can work this out." James shook his head. "I don't know if there's anything left to work out." He turned and walked out of the house, leaving Jessica alone with her regrets. The flight to Denver was uneventful, giving James plenty of time to reflect on his situation. By the time the plane landed, he had made up his mind. He couldn't continue living a lie, pretending that everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. James rented a car and drove to a hotel in downtown Denver. He checked in, unpacked his bags, and sat on the edge of the bed, staring out the window at the city lights. He felt a strange sense of freedom, mingled with the sadness of his crumbling marriage. The next morning, James decided to explore the city. He walked along the bustling streets, enjoying the crisp morning air. Denver was a vibrant city, full of life and energy, a stark contrast to the emptiness he felt inside. He found a quaint little cafe and ordered a coffee, sitting by the window to watch the world go by. As he sipped his drink, he couldn't help but think about Jessica and the life they had built together. It seemed like another lifetime, a distant memory that was now tainted by betrayal. James spent the rest of the day exploring Denver, trying to distract himself from the turmoil inside. He visited museums, walked through parks, and even took a drive into the nearby mountains. The beauty of the landscape provided a brief respite from his thoughts, but the pain of Jessica's betrayal was always there, lurking in the back of his mind. That evening, James found himself in the hotel bar, nursing a whiskey. The dim lighting and soft music provided a comforting backdrop to his brooding thoughts. As he sat there, lost in his own world, a woman approached and sat down next to him. "Mind if I join you?" she asked, her voice warm and friendly. James looked up, surprised. The woman was in her mid-30s, with dark hair and a kind smile. She wore a simple yet elegant dress and carried herself with a quiet confidence. "Not at all," James replied, managing a small smile. "I'm Chloe," she said, extending her hand. "James," he replied, shaking her hand. They sat in comfortable silence for a few moments, sipping their drinks. Chloe seemed to sense that James was in no mood for small talk, and she respected his space. After a while, James felt the need to explain himself. "I'm not usually this gloomy," he said, a touch of humor in his voice. "It's just been a rough couple of days." Chloe nodded, her eyes understanding. "Want to talk about it?" James hesitated, then nodded. "I found out my wife has been having an affair. It's been a lot to process." "I'm sorry to hear that," Chloe said sincerely. "That's a tough thing to go through." James appreciated her sympathy. "Thanks. I just needed to get away for a bit, clear my head." They continued to talk, and James found himself opening up to Chloe in a way he hadn't expected. She listened without judgment, offering quiet support and understanding. For the first time in days, James felt a glimmer of hope. As the evening wore on, James and Chloe talked about everything from their favorite books to their travels and life experiences. James learned that Chloe was a server at a local restaurant, working her way through a degree in psychology. She had a warm, genuine nature that made James feel at ease. When it was time to leave, Chloe gave James a reassuring smile. "Take care of yourself, James. And remember, things will get better. It just takes time." James watched her go, feeling a sense of gratitude for the unexpected connection. As he made his way back to his room, he realized that despite the pain and betrayal, there were still good people in the world. And perhaps, in time, he could find his way to a better place. James woke up the next morning in his hotel room in Denver, feeling slightly more at peace than he had the day before. The conversation with Chloe had given him a small sense of relief, and he was ready to face the day with a bit more clarity. He decided to start looking for a more permanent place to stay, knowing he couldn't live in a hotel indefinitely. James spent the morning browsing through apartment listings on his laptop. After making a few calls, he had scheduled 3 appointments to view potential places. The first was a high-rise apartment downtown with a stunning view of the mountains. The second was a cozy 1-bedroom in a quieter neighborhood, and the third was a loft in an up-and-coming area of the city. James decided to check out the high-rise apartment first. He was greeted by a friendly leasing agent named Lisa. "Welcome, Mr. Peterson. It's great to meet you," Lisa said with a warm smile. "Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate you showing me around," James replied. They took the elevator up to the 24th floor. The apartment was spacious, with large windows that offered a breathtaking view of the Rockies. "This is our deluxe unit," Lisa explained. "It has 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and all the amenities you could need. The rent includes access to the building's gym, pool, and rooftop lounge." James nodded, impressed by the place. However, something about it felt too sterile, too impersonal. He thanked Lisa for her time and moved on to his next appointment. The cozy 1-bedroom apartment in the quieter neighborhood was a stark contrast to the high-rise. The building was older, but it had a certain charm. The landlord, Mrs. Thompson, was an elderly woman who had lived in the building for decades. "Good morning, young man," Mrs. Thompson greeted him. "I'm glad you came by to see the place." "Good morning, Mrs. Thompson. Thank you for showing it to me," James replied. The apartment was small but cozy, with a lived-in feel. The walls were adorned with vintage wallpaper, and the wooden floors creaked with every step. James felt a sense of comfort here that he hadn't felt in the high-rise. "I know it's not much, but it's a good place," Mrs. Thompson said. "The neighbors are friendly, and it's a quiet area." James smiled. "It's lovely, Mrs. Thompson. I'll definitely keep it in mind." The last apartment was a loft in an industrial part of the city that was undergoing redevelopment. The building had been a factory in the early 1900s and had recently been converted into modern lofts. The agent, Mark, was a young and enthusiastic realtor. "Hey there, you must be James," Mark said, extending his hand. "Welcome to the Loft District." "Thanks, Mark. I appreciate you showing me around," James replied, shaking his hand. The loft was a blend of old and new, with exposed brick walls and large, industrial-style windows. The open floor plan gave it a spacious feel, and the kitchen had been outfitted with sleek, modern appliances. "This place has a lot of history," Mark explained. "The developers kept a lot of the original features while updating it for modern living." James was intrigued by the loft's character and history. It felt like a place where he could start anew, blending his past with a fresh future. After much consideration, James decided to go with the loft. It felt like the perfect place to begin his new chapter. He signed the lease and made arrangements to move in within the week. The day James moved into his new loft was a busy one. He had hired movers to bring his belongings from Los Angeles, and he spent the day unpacking and arranging his new home. By evening, he was exhausted but felt a sense of accomplishment as he looked around his new space. James sat down on the couch, sipping a glass of wine, and allowed himself to relax. The loft felt right, like a blank canvas waiting for him to paint his new life upon it. He thought about his children and how he would tell them about the changes in his life. He decided to call Matthew first. "Hey, Dad, how's it going?" Matthew's cheerful voice came through the phone. "Hey, Matthew. I'm doing all right. How about you? How's school?" James asked. "It's going well, busy as always. What's new with you?" James took a deep breath. Actually, I've moved to Denver. There's been a lot going on, and I needed a change of scenery. Matthew was silent for a moment. Denver? That's a big move. What's going on, Dad? James hesitated but knew he needed to be honest. Your mother and I are having some issues. We're separated for now. I found out she's been having an affair. Wow, Dad, I'm so sorry to hear that, Matthew said, his voice full of concern. Are you okay? I'm managing, James replied. It's been tough, but I'm trying to move forward. I wanted you to know what was happening. I appreciate you telling me, Dad. If you need anything, just let me know. We'll get through this together. Thanks, Matthew. That means a lot, James said, feeling a bit lighter. They talked for a while longer, and James felt reassured by Matthew's support. He decided to call Emily and Sophie the next day. A few days later, James decided to reach out to Chloe. They had exchanged numbers after their conversation at the hotel bar, and he felt a connection with her that he wanted to explore. Hi, Chloe. It's James. I was wondering if you'd like to grab dinner sometime? He asked nervously. Hi, James. I'd love to. How about this Friday? There's a great Italian place downtown, Chloe suggested. Sounds perfect. See you then, James replied, feeling a flutter of excitement. Friday evening arrived, and James found himself at a charming Italian restaurant, waiting for Chloe. She arrived a few minutes later, looking as lovely as ever. Hi, James. It's good to see you, Chloe said with a warm smile. You too, Chloe. Thanks for meeting me, James replied. They were seated at a cozy table by the window, and as they perused the menu, James felt a sense of ease. The conversation flowed naturally, covering everything from their favorite foods to their dreams and aspirations. I'm really glad we met, James said as their main courses arrived. Talking to you has helped me a lot. I'm glad too, James. You've been through a lot, and I'm happy to be here for you, Chloe replied, her eyes sincere. As the evening progressed, they shared more about their lives. Chloe told James about her studies in psychology and her hopes of becoming a therapist. James opened up about his work, his children, and the pain of his failed marriage. It's hard to believe how much has changed in such a short time, James said, his voice tinged with sadness. But I'm trying to stay positive and look forward. You're doing great, James. It's okay to feel sad and angry. Those feelings are valid, but it's also important to allow yourself to heal and find happiness again, Chloe said gently. Their conversation continued late into the night, and by the time they left the restaurant, James felt a renewed sense of hope. He walked Chloe to her car and thanked her for the wonderful evening. Good night, Chloe. I had a great time, James said, smiling. Good night, James. Me too. Let's do this again soon, Chloe replied, giving him a hug. As James watched her drive away, he felt a warmth he hadn't felt in a long time. He was beginning to see that life could go on, and that he could find happiness again, one step at a time. James woke up the next morning feeling a sense of optimism he hadn't felt in months. The dinner with Chloe had been a turning point, a reminder that life could still hold pleasant surprises and new beginnings. As he sat down with his morning coffee, he decided it was time to call his daughters, Emily and Sophie, to explain the situation and let them know about his move to Denver. James dialed Emily's number first, his heart pounding slightly as he anticipated her reaction. Hey, Dad, how's everything? Emily's cheerful voice came through the line. Hi, Emily. I'm doing okay. I actually have something important to tell you, James began, trying to keep his voice steady. What's up? Emily asked, a note of concern creeping into her tone. I've moved to Denver. Your mom and I are going through a separation right now, James said, taking a deep breath. I found out she's been having an affair. There was a brief silence on the other end before Emily spoke. Oh my God, Dad. I'm so sorry. Are you okay? I'm managing, James replied. It's been tough, but I'm trying to move forward. I wanted you to hear it from me directly. Thanks for telling me, Dad. I'm here for you, whatever you need, Emily said sincerely. Have you talked to Sophie yet? Not yet. I'm about to call her next, James said. I just wanted to let you know first. Okay. Please take care of yourself, Dad. We'll get through this together, Emily assured him. Thanks, Emily. I love you, James said, feeling a bit more at ease. I love you too, Dad. Talk to you soon, Emily replied before hanging up. With a deep breath, James dialed Sophie's number. She answered almost immediately. Hey, Dad, what's up? Sophie's voice was full of youthful energy. Hi, Sophie. I have some news, James began, bracing himself for her reaction. Your mom and I are separated. I found out she's been unfaithful, and I've moved to Denver. Oh no, Dad. I'm so sorry to hear that, Sophie said, her voice softening. Are you okay? I'm getting by, James replied. I wanted to tell you directly. It's a lot to process, but I'm here if you have any questions. Wow, I don't know what to say. I'm really sorry, Dad. I'm here for you, Sophie said. Thanks, Sophie. It means a lot. We'll figure this out together, James said, feeling a sense of relief after sharing the news with his daughters. Absolutely. Love you, Dad, Sophie said. Love you too, Sophie. Take care, James replied before ending the call. With the weight of those conversations lifted, James felt a bit lighter. His daughter's support meant the world to him, and he knew he wasn't alone in this journey. A few days later, James was at his loft, organizing some books on the shelves when his phone rang. It was a number he didn't recognize, but he decided to answer it. Hello? James, it's Jessica, came the familiar voice of his wife, tinged with anxiety. James felt a surge of emotions, anger, sadness, and a hint of the love they once shared. What do you want, Jessica? I need to talk to you. Can we meet? Jessica asked, her voice trembling. James hesitated. Why? What more is there to say? Please, James. I know I've hurt you, but I need to explain, Jessica pleaded. James took a deep breath. All right, where and when? There's a cafe on Elm Street. How about 3 p.m.? Jessica suggested. Fine, I'll be there, James agreed, ending the call. At 3 p.m. sharp, James walked into the cafe on Elm Street. He spotted Jessica sitting at a corner table, looking anxious and somewhat disheveled. As he approached, she stood up, her eyes filled with remorse. James, thank you for coming, Jessica said, her voice soft. Let's just get this over with, James replied, sitting down across from her. Jessica took a deep breath. I'm so sorry, James. I never meant to hurt you. I don't know what came over me. James looked at her, his expression unreadable. Why, Jessica, why did you do it? Jessica's eyes filled with tears. I felt so alone, James. You were always working, and I felt neglected. Daniel was there, and it just happened. That's not an excuse, James said, his voice tinged with anger. We could have talked about it, worked through it. But you chose to betray me. I know, Jessica whispered. And I regret it every single day. James sighed, feeling a mix of anger and pity. What do you want from me now? I want to try to make things right, Jessica said, her voice trembling. I know it's a long shot, but I want to save our marriage. James shook his head. I don't know if that's possible, Jessica. Too much has happened. Please, James, can we at least try counseling? For the sake of our family? Jessica pleaded. James looked at her, his heart heavy. I'll think about it, but I can't promise anything. Thank you, James. That's all I ask, Jessica said, a flicker of hope in her eyes. James stood up, ready to leave. I need time, Jessica. Don't contact me until I reach out. Jessica nodded, tears streaming down her face. Okay, I understand. As James walked out of the cafe, he felt a sense of closure. He knew he had a lot to think about, but for now, he needed to focus on himself and his new life in Denver. The next evening, James decided to reach out to Chloe again. He needed someone to talk to, and Chloe had proven to be a good listener. Hey, Chloe, it's James. Are you free for dinner again? He asked, hoping she would say yes. Hi, James. I'd love to. How about tonight? Same place? Chloe suggested. Sounds great. See you at 7 p.m., James replied, feeling a sense of anticipation. At 7 p.m., James arrived at the Italian restaurant where he and Chloe had dined before. She was already there, waiting for him with a smile. Hi, James. It's good to see you again, Chloe said warmly. You too, Chloe. Thanks for meeting me, James replied, grateful for her presence. They were seated at a cozy table, and as they looked over the menu, James felt a sense of comfort. He shared the encounter with Jessica and his mixed feelings about their conversation. I'm not sure what to do, Chloe. She wants to try counseling, but I don't know if I can forgive her, James confessed. Chloe listened intently. It's a tough situation, James. Trust is hard to rebuild once it's broken. But if you feel there's a chance, it might be worth exploring. James nodded, appreciating her perspective. Thanks, Chloe. I just don't want to make any hasty decisions. Take your time. There's no rush, Chloe said gently. You need to do what's best for you. They continued to talk, and James found solace in Chloe's company. As the night wore on, he realized how much he valued her friendship and support. When they finished their meal, Chloe looked at James with a smile. I'm really glad we've become friends, James. You're a good person, and you deserve happiness. Thanks, Chloe. I feel the same way about you, James replied, feeling a warmth in his heart. As they parted ways, James felt a renewed sense of hope. He didn't have all the answers yet, but he was beginning to see a path forward. One step at a time, he would rebuild his life and find happiness again. Over the next few days, James thought a lot about Jessica's request for counseling. He weighed the pros and cons, considering the impact on his children and his own emotions. Finally, he decided to give it a try, if only to find some closure. He called Jessica to let her know. I've decided to try counseling, James said. But I'm doing this for our family, not because I'm ready to forgive you. Thank you, James. That's all I ask, Jessica replied, her voice filled with relief. They arranged their first counseling session, and James felt a mixture of apprehension and determination. He wasn't sure what the future held, but he knew he needed to face it head on. A week later, James and Jessica arrived at the counselor's office. Dr. Angela Harper was a seasoned therapist with a calm demeanor that put them both at ease. Welcome, James and Jessica. I'm glad you're here, Dr. Harper said, inviting them to sit. James and Jessica took their seats, feeling a mix of nerves and hope. Let's start by talking about why you're here, Dr. Harper began. Jessica, why don't you go first? Jessica took a deep breath. I made a terrible mistake, and I want to make things right. I know I've hurt James deeply, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to rebuild our trust. James listened, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. I don't know if I can forgive her, but I want to try for the sake of our family. I need to understand why this happened and see if there's any way forward. Dr. Harper nodded. It's important to acknowledge your feelings, James. This process will take time, and it's okay to feel unsure. We'll work through this together. The session continued with Dr. Harper guiding them through their emotions and helping them communicate openly. By the end, both James and Jessica felt a glimmer of hope, though they knew the road ahead would be long and difficult. After the counseling session, James called Emily and Sophie to update them. Hey, Emily. Just wanted to let you know that I've decided to try counseling with your mom, James said. That's good to hear, Dad. I hope it helps, Emily replied. We're here for you. Thanks, Emily. I appreciate it, James said before calling Sophie. Hi, Sophie. I wanted to tell you that I'm giving counseling a try with your mom, James said. I'm glad, Dad. It's worth a shot, Sophie replied. I love you. I love you too, Sophie, James said, feeling the support of his daughters. James continued to see Chloe regularly, finding comfort in their growing friendship. He also attended counseling sessions with Jessica, slowly working through their issues. It wasn't easy, and there were moments of doubt and frustration, but James was determined to see it through. One evening, as James and Chloe sat in a park, watching the sunset, James felt a sense of peace. Thank you for being there for me, Chloe, James said, turning to her. You're welcome, James. I'm glad we've become friends, Chloe replied, smiling. As the sun dipped below the horizon, James realized that no matter what happened with Jessica, he was on a journey of healing and self-discovery. With the support of his family and friends, he knew he could face whatever challenges lay ahead. James continued to navigate his new life in Denver, balancing his time between counseling sessions, work, and growing friendships. The counseling sessions with Jessica were intense and emotionally draining, but they provided a space for both of them to express their feelings and begin to understand each other's perspectives. During one particularly difficult session, Dr. Harper asked James to talk about what he missed most about his marriage before the affair. I miss the trust and the intimacy, James admitted, his voice cracking. I miss feeling like I mattered to her. Jessica, sitting across from him, looked down, her eyes filled with tears. I'm so sorry, James. I took you for granted, and I didn't realize how much I was hurting you. Dr. Harper nodded, encouraging James to continue. What else, James? James took a deep breath. I miss the small things. The way we used to laugh together, the way she would hold my hand when we walked. I miss the connection we had. Jessica wiped her tears, looking at James with a mixture of regret and longing. I miss those things too, James. I want to find a way back to that. Dr. Harper interjected gently. Rebuilding trust and intimacy takes time, but acknowledging these feelings is a crucial step. It's important to remember that both of you need to be patient with yourselves and each other. Despite the progress in counseling, James found solace in his friendship with Chloe. One evening, she invited him to dinner with a few of her friends, hoping to introduce him to more people in Denver. "James, this is Sarah and Mike," Chloe said, introducing him to a couple in their early 30s. "Nice to meet you both," James said, shaking their hands. "We've heard a lot about you," Sarah said with a smile. "Chloe speaks very highly of you." "Likewise," James replied, feeling a bit more at ease. The dinner was held at a cozy restaurant, with laughter and conversation filling the air. James enjoyed getting to know Chloe's friends, finding their warmth and friendliness comforting. As the evening progressed, Sarah turned to James. "Chloe mentioned you're going through a tough time. If you ever need someone to talk to or hang out with, we're here for you." James appreciated the offer. "Thanks, Sarah. That means a lot." After dinner, Chloe and James took a walk through the city, enjoying the cool evening air. "I'm really glad you came tonight," Chloe said, linking her arm with his. "Me too. Your friends are great," James replied, feeling grateful for the support network he was building. Just as James felt he was making progress, a setback occurred. During a counseling session, Jessica revealed that Daniel had reached out to her, apologizing for his role in the affair and expressing a desire to make amends. "I didn't respond to him, James. I promise," Jessica said, her voice pleading. "But I thought you should know." James felt a surge of anger. Why is he reaching out now? Haven't we been through enough? Dr. Harper intervened. "It's understandable that this would upset you, James. It's important to address these feelings rather than suppress them." James clenched his fists, struggling to control his emotions. "I just want to move on, but it feels like the past keeps dragging us back." Dr. Harper nodded. "It's a difficult process, but acknowledging and addressing these triggers is part of healing." "Jessica, it's good that you were honest with James. Transparency is crucial." James took a deep breath, trying to calm down. "I appreciate you telling me, Jessica. But it's hard to hear." "I know, and I'm sorry," Jessica said softly. "I just want to make things right." Needing a break from the emotional intensity, James decided to take a weekend trip to the mountains. He invited Chloe to join him, hoping to spend some time in nature and clear his mind. "This place is beautiful," Chloe said as they arrived at a charming cabin nestled in the Rockies. "It really is. I thought it would be a nice escape," James replied, feeling a sense of peace wash over him. They spent the weekend hiking, enjoying the fresh mountain air, and talking about life. The natural surroundings provided a perfect backdrop for reflection and relaxation. One evening, as they sat by a crackling fire, Chloe turned to James. "How are you feeling about everything?" James stared into the flames, gathering his thoughts. "I'm still hurt and angry, but I'm also hopeful. The counseling is helping, and so is having you as a friend." Chloe smiled. "I'm glad to hear that. You deserve happiness, James." "Thanks, Chloe. So do you," James replied, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for her presence in his life. Returning to Denver, James felt rejuvenated. He continued attending counseling sessions with Jessica, and although the progress was slow, they were beginning to rebuild some semblance of trust. At work, James threw himself into new projects, finding solace in his professional achievements. His colleagues noticed a change in him, a renewed energy and determination. One afternoon, his boss, Mr. Langston, called him into his office. "James, I've noticed the great work you've been doing lately," Mr. Langston said. "I wanted to discuss a potential promotion. We're expanding our operations, and I think you'd be a great fit for a leadership role." James was taken aback. "Thank you, Mr. Langston. I'm honored. I'd love to discuss it further." They spent the next hour talking about the details, and by the end of the meeting, James felt a surge of excitement. The promotion represented a fresh start professionally, mirroring the personal changes he was experiencing. One evening, after a particularly good counseling session, James and Jessica took a walk together. It was the first time in months that they felt a sense of normalcy. "Do you think we'll ever get back to where we were?" Jessica asked, her voice tinged with hope. James thought for a moment. "I don't know if we can ever go back, but maybe we can find a new path forward. It won't be easy, but I'm willing to try." Jessica nodded, tears in her eyes. "Thank you, James. I'm willing to try too." As they walked, hand in hand, James felt a glimmer of hope. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time, he felt that they might be able to navigate it together. Back at his loft, James reflected on his journey over the past few months. He had faced betrayal, anger, and sadness, but he had also found strength, hope, and new connections. He realized that life was a series of ups and downs, and it was how he navigated these moments that defined his path. He picked up the phone and called Chloe. "Hey, Chloe, I just wanted to thank you for everything. Your support means the world to me." "Anytime, James. I'm here for you," Chloe replied warmly. As he hung up, James felt a sense of peace. He didn't have all the answers, but he was moving forward, one step at a time. With the support of his family, friends, and newfound resilience, he knew he could face whatever challenges lay ahead. James's life continued to evolve as he balanced his job, counseling sessions, and growing relationships. He was making progress, but new challenges were always on the horizon. James's promotion was officially announced at work. His colleagues congratulated him, and he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The new position came with more responsibilities and opportunities to showcase his leadership skills. At a team meeting, Mr. Langston introduced James in his new role. "Everyone, I'm pleased to announce that James Peterson will be taking on the role of Senior Project Manager. His dedication and hard work have been exemplary, and I'm confident he will excel in this position." James nodded, feeling both excited and nervous. "Thank you, Mr. Langston. I'm looking forward to working with all of you to achieve our goals." After the meeting, his colleagues approached him with congratulations and support. One of his team members, Karen, expressed her excitement about working under his leadership. "James, I'm really happy for you. You've earned this," Karen said with a smile. "Thanks, Karen. I'm excited to work with such a talented team," James replied, feeling a sense of camaraderie. The counseling sessions with Jessica were ongoing. Dr. Harper guided them through difficult conversations and exercises to rebuild their trust and communication. During one session, Dr. Harper suggested they write letters to each other, expressing their feelings and hopes for the future. James and Jessica both took the task seriously, pouring their hearts into their letters. When they read their letters aloud, it was a cathartic experience. James's letter expressed his pain but also his desire to find a way forward. Jessica's letter was filled with regret and a deep longing to make amends. Dr. Harper smiled. "These letters are a great step. They show that you both care deeply about each other and are willing to work on your relationship." James felt a renewed sense of hope. "Thank you, Dr. Harper. This process has been incredibly challenging, but I believe we're making progress." Jessica nodded, wiping away tears. "I'm committed to this, James. I want us to heal and be stronger than ever." James and Jessica began to build a new routine together. They set aside time each week for date nights and activities they enjoyed. They also attended a support group for couples dealing with infidelity, finding comfort in shared experiences. One evening, they decided to go hiking in the mountains, something they used to love doing together. The fresh air and beautiful scenery provided a perfect backdrop for reconnecting. "This reminds me of our early days together," James said as they reached a scenic overlook. Jessica smiled. "I remember those hikes. They were some of my favorite memories." They sat down on a rock, taking in the view. "I want to create new memories like these," Jessica said softly. "I want us to be happy again." James took her hand. "So do I, Jessica. It's going to take time, but I'm willing to work for it." James continued to see Chloe regularly. Their friendship had grown stronger, and Chloe became a crucial part of his support system. One evening, they decided to have a movie night at James's loft. They chose a light-hearted comedy, hoping to relax and enjoy each other's company. As they watched the movie, Chloe turned to James. "You seem more at peace these days. How are things with Jessica?" James nodded. "We're making progress. It's slow, but we're trying to rebuild what we lost." Chloe smiled. "I'm glad to hear that. You both deserve happiness." After the movie, they sat and talked for hours, sharing stories and laughter. James realized how much he valued Chloe's friendship and how she had been a beacon of light during his darkest times. James decided it was time for a family meeting. He wanted to discuss the situation with his children and ensure they understood what was happening. Emily, Sophie, and Matthew gathered at James's loft. He felt a mix of nervousness and determination as he prepared to talk to them. "Thanks for coming, everyone. I wanted to have this meeting to update you on how things are going, James began. Emily spoke first. We appreciate you keeping us in the loop, Dad. How are you and Mom doing? We're working through things in counseling. It's been challenging, but we're committed to trying to rebuild our relationship, James explained. Sophie nodded. I'm glad you're both working on it. We just want you to be happy. Matthew added, we're here for you, Dad. Whatever happens, we'll support you. James felt a wave of gratitude. Thank you, all of you. Your support means the world to me. They spent the rest of the evening talking about their lives and sharing updates. The meeting left James feeling more connected to his children and hopeful about the future. Months passed, and James continued to make progress. The counseling sessions with Jessica were still ongoing, but they were finding a new rhythm in their relationship. They had their ups and downs, but the overall trend was positive. At work, James thrived in his new role. His team respected him, and he found fulfillment in his projects. The professional success bolstered his confidence and gave him a sense of stability. One day, Chloe invited James to a charity event she was involved with. It was a fundraiser for a local children's hospital, and she thought it would be a good opportunity for James to meet more people and support a good cause. This is a great event, Chloe. Thanks for inviting me, James said as they arrived at the venue. I'm glad you could make it. The children's hospital is close to my heart, and it means a lot to have your support, Chloe replied. The event was a success, raising significant funds for the hospital. James felt proud to be part of it and grateful for the opportunity to give back to the community. As the seasons changed, James reflected on his journey. He had faced immense challenges, but he had also found strength and resilience he didn't know he had. The relationships he had rebuilt and the new ones he had formed were testaments to his growth. One evening, as he sat on his balcony, watching the sunset over Denver, he felt a sense of peace. Life was still unpredictable, and there were no guarantees, but he knew he could handle whatever came his way. His phone buzzed with a message from Chloe. Hey, want to grab dinner tomorrow? I have some exciting news to share. James smiled, typing a quick response. Sure, sounds great. Can't wait to hear it. As he put his phone down, James realized that despite the hardships, he had found a new beginning. With the support of his family and friends, he was ready to embrace the future, one step at a time. You've been listening to Storytime Audio, where we share stories that touch the heart and soul. In today's tale, Rebuilding After Betrayal, the journey through a cheating wife's infidelity, we followed James Peterson's tumultuous journey through betrayal, healing, and hope. As he navigates the complexities of trust and forgiveness, James learns that life's challenges can lead to unexpected growth and new beginnings. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more captivating tales. Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep listening, keep growing, and remember, every story has the power to change a life.